On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, I welcome Jeremy Payne, mentor, leader, and founder of My Black Carrot, to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Jeremy shares how life's unexpected identity pivots from athletics to leadership shaped his purpose and how he now helps others navigate change, manage anxiety, and grow through adversity. This will be a good one. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up wherever you are, whatever you're doing? I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow the podcast and get access to previous episodes on all those podcast platforms at Survive and Thrive 8791. The podcast. Don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you like what you heard. If there's a topic or a guest who would love to share their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday morning featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as, but not limited to, grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, mental illness, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. Before I introduce our guests, I'd like to highlight our website, surviveandthrive8791.com. You can see what we are doing and the events we are hosting. If you're a business or an advocate for mental health and recovery, we invite you to partner with us through sponsorship opportunities. Please contact us at surviveandthrive8791 at gmail.com. This is our guest and episode intro. Are you ready, Jeremy?
I feel like it.
You feel like it. Well, we'll find out right now. According to the internet, and the internet is always right, correct, Jeremy?
That's what they say.
That's what they say. Okay. That might be the first in over 100 episodes. That's what they say.
That's okay. Hey.
All right. Well, in my house, and I don't know if this is what it's like in your house, but in my house, I have my wife, Sarah, and she's always right. I don't need Alexa. I don't need Siri. I got my wife, and she's always right. Sounds similar to you?
Absolutely, man. My life partner, she's such a well-rounded person, and so it's really hard to assert and to make a case in any situation. And so, we dance with it, we have fun, but she's usually right.
Awesome. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Well, according to an AI artificial intelligence overview, a significant majority of young adults struggle with finding themselves after high school, with approximately 72% of recent graduates reporting feeling only moderately, slightly, or not at all prepared for their next steps. This widespread uncertainty stems from a lack of clear direction, with roughly 4 in 10 students being unclear about career expectations. Our guest went through some of that uncertainty and has found purpose in his life. Today, I welcome Jeremy Payne to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Jeremy grew up in Blue Island, Illinois, and attended Dwight D. Eisenhower High School and is a proud Cardinal. After high school, Jeremy would take his talents to Southern Illinois University and planned to walk on the football team. But due to a coaching change, walk-ons were not being accepted. He would eventually transfer to the Harvard of the Midwest, the University of Wisconsin Platteville, where he played football and ran track. He would graduate with a degree in health and human performance and later earned a master's degree in a multidisciplinary program that combined many aspects. He has worn many hats in his professional career. Today, I'm so glad you could join us. Jeremy Payne, what is up?
Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's not very often that we get two pioneers in the same room.
Yeah, how cool is that?
Yeah, I've got two Badgers, I've got a Panther, and I have an Eau Claire Blue Gold.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's not very many pioneers. So when I get a pioneer down here, I love it.
Yes. Let's have a good time.
Yeah, and we've got Pioneer Pete, although he is not around anymore. I think they went with a different dude. First question, we're shooting in the late afternoon of Tax Day, April 15th. And the big thing on TV as we got this in the background is tornado season came early to Wisconsin. Did you experience any high winds down in Mineral Point?
Yeah, well, something your viewers and listeners should know is this is being shot right in the basement, right? And we got a TV in the background, and it's wild in terms of the alignment, how a story about the storm and the impact across the state has flashed across the screen. So absolutely, man. We definitely got hit by that storm. We got some wind damage. We got some heavy hail. I think they said it was the size of like golf balls and things like that. And then, as you know, I weave Mineral Point as the city that I live, but also get up to Madison. And so in Madison, in the downtown area, we saw a little bit of flooding as well. And so it's a hard one. This one went hard.
I posted on Facebook last night trying to get some notoriety, but I had two pieces of hail in my hand, and because I'm a former PE ed teacher, I said they were the size of pickleballs. And then I also liked to shoot pool when I was a kid, so they look like cue balls. They were crazy. I was down here doing a little work. Actually really wasn't down doing work. They said find your safe place, so we came down here last night. And I was over there laying down, and all of a sudden, thump, thump, boom, boom. I'm like, what is that? And then my wife said, it's hail coming down. Crazy. Well, let's look past the hail and the tornado warnings and such. Summer is right around the corner. What are you looking forward to about summer?
Oh, there's so much I'm looking forward to. And honestly, a big piece of my summer is going to be like slowing down, getting more immersed in my community and figuring out the new lay of my land. And so half a year ago, we closed on a home in Mineral Point, Wisconsin, the city. And so
the home of the Pointers. Home
of the Pointers, absolutely. And so this would be our first full summer of not having heavy commitments. We're not in the process of moving. We're not doing heavy projects. We're really trying to just settle in. And so this summer, I'm looking forward to some gardening. I'm looking forward to, as I say, no projects. We got minor projects around the way to do. And I'm looking forward to connecting with the neighbors and folks within my community.
All right. So you got a green thumb. What do you like? Ooh. What do you like to plant? Are you more of a flower guy? Are you more of a fruits and vegetables guy? Where are you?
Yeah. Well, if you listen to too much, NPR or WPR radio, they'll tell you what not to grow, right? In terms of trying to preserve the land and make sure that everything is well. But for myself, I really enjoy growing cucumbers. That's something I have this wild commitment to. I love me some pickles. I also love just cutting up the cucumbers for salads and things like that. And I eat them a lot actually in the summer. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure we're going to commit to that. And I'm sure there's some other things my wife has in mind.
Well, if you're in the area and you've got a couple of baskets full of vegetables, cucumbers or tomatoes, hit me up.
Oh, I got you. And I got a neighbor too who always have way too much. So I'll definitely keep you in mind for that.
Absolutely. Well, before we get to your story, I need to talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, are a place that people can escape to. For me, it's a great escape from cooking dinner. I got my first question. Do you cook dinner? And if so, what's your genre, style, or cuisine?
Jeez, that's a loaded question.
It's a softball. I'm grooving it right in there.
Okay. I enjoy cooking. I have a few to-go-tos, depending on the mood and the vibe. But with that 3-year-old daughter we have at home, we have to be very tactful in how we play with the meals. And so I would say my go-to meal that I feel the most confident in is my fried cabbage with mac and cheese and some sort of meat to go with it. I love smoked meat. So that's usually the combo I like.
Okay. Fried meat or fried,
the smoked meat.
Smoked meat, but you said fried cabbage.
Yep, that's the one.
Okay, fried cabbage. You might have to slide me the recipe. Send me that in an email because I've tried some of those dishes and they are amazing, but I'd love to try yours.
Yeah, let me tell you something too. I know that my fried cabbage is good not only because my household like it, because that's very important, but I also have a lot of aunties in our neighborhoods and in our communities who certify and say that I got that thing down. And so to hear that from my elders in the community means a lot. So I have to make sure you get some of that.
People in Pointer Country will say, hey, Jeremy, can you bring your fried cabbage?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's when you know you've made it and you've been accepted in the community.
It's the food, I tell you.
Yes. Well, with their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming environment and atmosphere, people keep coming back with locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Waunakee, and Mount Horeb. Most communities in Dane County, which encompasses the Madison metropolitan area, can get to a Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. I got a little drum roll here. Have you been to Buck and Honey's?
I have not.
Okay. Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
The closest one to you would probably be Mount Horeb.
Okay.
And I would suggest that if you do get to go, they have some great pizza, but they have when you walk in, it's 5-star. You're thinking, wow, this is a great looking place.
Sure.
But when you look at the menu, it's 2-star prices. So you can get a burger for pretty cheap. You can get a Reuben. You can get a pizza.
Okay.
So it's very nice, but then the prices are very reasonable. So
I got you.
I would recommend Buck and Honey's.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
On the podcast, our guests follow the format for sharing their story like this. In segment 1, we talk about what was it like, Jeremy's history, what happened to get Jeremy on the podcast. And in segment 2, we continue to talk about what happened and get into what it's like now and discuss Jeremy's 5 suggestions for thriving. So you grew up just outside the Windy City, Chicago,
Yes.
Illinois.
Yes.
Graduated from Dwight D. Eisenhower High School, and you're a proud Cardinal.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about what life was like growing up in Blue Island, Illinois. I had to look that up, by the way.
Look, most people do.
Yeah.
Most people do. Most people have to look it up because Blue Island, while it is known in the state of Illinois, it's not very well known, beyond. And so, like, it's the southernmost southwest suburb to the city of Chicago, and it's adjacent to Mount Horeb community. And I just love it. I love Blue Island. I love Chicago and its intertwined history. If I simply had to describe it, growing up around that way was a very enjoyable situation. I was always surrounded by love. And when I say love, I'm talking about deep, old school, very basic. You don't have to question it. It's not tethered to any expectations. Like, I had love coming from so many places. So I had a mother who was very present with me. I had a stepfather who held it down for our family. And then we had family and friends around the way who looked out for us to make sure that we were okay. And then, as I mentioned in some of the questions that I answered way back, I grew up in a larger household. So I had 3 brothers and 6 sisters. And for the majority of my life, a good portion of them lived with us. And if they didn't, we were always heavily connected to them. And so there was a lot of joy. And somehow, some way, my family was able to figure out how to, make sure that they look out for each one of them. My mom and dad held that down very well. In addition to that, growing up in Blue Island, the southwest suburb of Chicago, we really were wrapped in joy, love, and care so much that some of the shortcomings that we did navigate, it was really hard to know really what it was until you saw what you didn't have. And so growing up in our neighborhood, we had the foot races, we had the organized sports, we had, flowers, birds, nature, buildings, big buildings, small buildings. It was a very dynamic situation based off the location. And there was always that dance, the dance of having all these things you're coveted in, but also some of the shortcomings. And so, we're not a unique family in the sense of we navigated some trauma and some harm and some, I would call some intergenerational items that carry over from generation on in. But I truly felt like, my family did the best they could with what they have, so much that, now I'm here hanging out with you, Tim, in your beautiful home and your beautiful basement.
Absolutely.
And so here it is, man.
So you grew up in Blue Island.
Yes, sir.
And you must have had so much love and caring people that you could go off into Dwight D. Eisenhower High School.
Yeah.
And probably a pretty decent sized school.
Oh, yeah.
What allowed you to then become the person you did in high school? Well, first of all, I know what did. That loving and caring atmosphere at home, but allowed you to go into high school with some confidence that you didn't need that.
Yeah.
But what allowed you to shine in the different things you did in high school?
Yeah. So the love and the things that I was coveted in spilled over from community to the school setting. And so a lot of the caretakers and parents and things that knew us from community were also staff and represented administrative staff within our school district. And so those same people who called on me for the love and care and community were at my school. And so I felt pretty confident in pursuing things that filled me with joy and happiness. And so I pursued, student council as the vice president my senior year. I played football at Eisenhower for 4 years. And I also did track and field and played basketball for 1 year within that. I don't know if I included that within the interview. But all to say, there was a lot of engagement and I was thrusted into it and felt safe to do it because I was always coveted by community. And that's one of the cool things. These things don't get picked up often in small communities about the dynamics of those larger cities. Even though we're large, we still have pockets and segments of community that look out for you. And so that was the journey that thrust me in confidence, to engage leadership.
That is so cool to hear, because I've had some people that have been on the podcast that went to big schools. And when I say big schools, like 1,500 kids and all the way up to 4,000 students. Yeah. And I went to a school of 500 in a small community of about 5,000 people.
Okay.
And it felt like a small town and a small feel, and everybody knew each other. But that also is the feeling from all of the guests that I've had on here that come from those big schools. They had the same thing, except it was a little bit on a larger scale.
That's it.
But they ran into the teachers at the grocery store. They saw, the custodians out and doing their thing in the community or at church or whatever. But that does exist, but just on a larger scale.
Yeah, no, that's what it is.
That's great to hear. Well, we can't go on without mentioning your own family, your wife and a daughter. Let's talk about them, because you've already kind of talked about your big family.
Yeah.
We would be here for an extra 2 or 3 hours if we had to talk about everybody. So let's go to your little family that you have now. Talk about them.
Yeah. So I have a daughter who's 3 years old, and her name is Nova Yanu, and she's our miracle child. And my life partner, I'll call her, but we are married. Her name is Bethany. And long story short, I met her while in college. And so it was within one of my first few classes as an incoming new freshman at University of Wisconsin-Platteville. We were sitting in class and trying to work out some things within that course, and we collaborated on projects that eventually led to connections and relationships and so forth. And then for the longest, man, my partner and I, once we got together, got engaged, got married, all connected to the Platteville area, we tried for the longest to conceive our own children and just couldn't figure out a natural way to make that happen. And so we did every test under the sun. We explored all the options that just didn't happen on the terms and at the time that we wanted it to happen. And so ironically enough, we had committed to, at one point, we said, you know what, we're just going to call it for what this is. This is maybe the call. This is our situation. Maybe let's explore adopting, and we feel content with this sort of dynamic. And so, like, as most people say, once you stop worrying and overthinking,
pressure's off.
The pressure, once that's off, then the thing happened. And so that's how Nova came to be, man. She was a sudden surprise, but in the best way. And man, she's been such a joy, man. It's rearranging when you become a parent, but especially on terms where you don't plan and forecast for it. It's kind of thrusted into your life. It rearranges you in such a beautiful way. And so I'm just happy and so fortunate to share this life experience with my partner Bethany, and to pour as much as we can into Nova in lieu of, some of the tricks and challenges of the world we navigate today.
We might have to have you come back to talk about that, because you're not the only one. There's other people that struggle with that, and then you would have some coping strategies or things that you can share. So I think we'll have you back to talk about that.
I would be honored to do that.
Absolutely. So you attended Dwight D. Eisenhower High School, and then you would attend Southern Illinois University and then finish up at UW-Platteville. And you kind of talked a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about how those years shaped you, that short amount of time at Southern Illinois, and then moving to Platteville.
Southern Illinois was a critical point in my life, because before I left for college, I had a lot of opportunities that were presented. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but as a standout football player at Eisenhower, a lot of opportunities were presented, a lot of recruitment, and at every level, D2, D1, D3, you name it, we had that exposure. And so there was a lot of pressure to choose the right school and make the right decisions. And I ultimately went with Southern Illinois. And the reason I don't share often, but I feel honored to share publicly, is that Southern Illinois was where my ancestors were from. I was able to track down and learn stories from my family about Cairo, Illinois, and Southern Illinois, as well as Western Kentucky, Western Tennessee. That was the hub. And so went off of college, found a major that made sense. Business administration was what a lot of family members told me that would seem right for me, and there's a story on that in the back end. And so I pursued it because a lot of family members thought that was best for me, and this is a recurring theme. I also pursued Southern as aspirations to do the football thing. And so while I wasn't heavily recruited specifically at Southern Illinois, they did share that there was opportunity to do a walk-on tryout there. And so, I attempted to do the walk-on tryout, but it was an odd situation where they were doing transition with coaching. And I was told at that level, coaches at that point in time, we're talking 10 to 15 years ago, they typically come in with who they know and what they want. And they usually have a plan for recruitment to, beef up that team to move forward. And so while they did host the tryout and I gave it my best, you could tell like the energy and the vibes of it was very much so like, we have to do this to do it, and here it is. And so
they had their mind made up, probably.
It felt that way. And on the back end, I was able to check in with other folks who I knew who were also trying out, and no one that I knew got picked up, from that walk-on tryout that year. And so that was a hit to my spirit, to my soul, because as I mentioned, I was a standout, football player at Eisenhower. So there was a lot of expectation that I would be, that one who makes it and do the things and make your community proud, because you carry them at your back when you typically go off to college, especially from our sort of communities. And so, yeah, that was one of the first few experiences
of adversity, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It rocked me, like I said, at every level of my soul. And we were able to, figure out a way beyond.
So then you would move on to the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, which is near and dear to my heart, because that's when I graduated in finished school in 91 and then graduated in 92.
Yeah.
But that place is near and dear to my heart as well, in Mineral Point area and just all that southwestern Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And then for you to come from a big city to go to school there and then stay there says, I think, a lot about the area and the people that live there, that they look at everybody like family. And then if you know somebody from Mineral Point, you probably know somebody from Schellsburg or, all of those areas. So talk about how the transition occurred from being a Saluki to being a Pioneer.
Ooh, it was a transition. I'll tell you this. I had a friend who was playing football at UW-Platteville College, and he told me about all the wonderful things and experiences, and he knew that I had this situation in Carbondale, and so he called on me to come down. And so, to be honest with you, full transparency, I did no campus tour. I did a couple of internet searches and word of mouth to hear and learn, and I trusted in the integrity and the ethics of my friendship with my friend, and I put a lot into that.
Sight unseen.
Exactly. And so, look, we came down, one-way trip. My stepfather packed me up and got me together and gave me a good speech and hug before he left, and he said, figure it out, once you get there. And it was a match made, though. It truly was. It was a very, as you know, Platteville is a small community, but it's packed with so much people. In terms of the broader community, they, what's the word I want to say? They rally behind this identity of calling themselves the driftless people. And with the driftless, it's basic politic. It's highly local. There is a level of love and care beyond differences, that exist. And it was something that made sense to me and made me feel safe. And so I got in there. I chased everything down that was possible for me, including the football, track and field, heavy involvement in leadership there as well. Started a dance team while I was there. And I met some really wonderful people along the way who supported me while I was there. And so in identity shift, going from the person who was going to make it to this guy who's like dancing and figuring it out, Platteville was truly a great place to have that situation play out, because I was wrapped in so much love and support along the way. So
they let you, stretch out your wings and do some different things that, maybe they didn't do before. But you know what? This is a place where we give the students opportunities to succeed and fail and then pick themselves up. And we'll be there to help you pick yourself up. And then what do you want to do next? So, that's what I loved about that. Community, that school community, and then it's just grown, and it looks the same but so much different now from the time that I was there.
Oh yeah, they got a lot happening.
After college, you would be drawn to work that centered, and I'm going to try to read this how you sent it to me, centered around people, culture, and community. So when you got out of college, you started doing some of the work that that I just talked about.
Yeah.
So I want you to talk about some of the work you've done since you got out of Platteville.
Yeah. So right after Platteville, I was very well positioned to take on whatever my heart and spirit called me to do. And so I had such a good time in Platteville that I wanted to emulate some of the support that I had while I was there. And so that was rallying support services across campus that include student support services and multicultural student support services. And so I had mentors who showed me the pathway and showed me how to continue education while also working within these fields as entryway. But because I was so skilled in my abilities and offered up so many opportunities as an undergrad, I was thrusted. Like my first full-time job right out the gate was as an assistant director of the multicultural student center or multicultural student affairs at the University of Dubuque, but eventually also at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. And so, right out the gate, I was thrusted into opportunities to ensure that students who come from various backgrounds, but who oftentimes look like me as well, I was thrusted into positions to ensure that they were happy, safe, and well-resourced to graduate and to make sure they were employed and also had a good time while they were in college and universities. And so it was an honor, truly. It was my way of giving back, but also working in things that felt more like play and joy. And it was quite the ride. Excuse me, right out the gate, high pressured, administrative leadership, very young, figuring that thing out oftentimes on the go, but also reaching back to mentors and things. It was a wild time in my life, but we made the most of it. We made most of that experience.
I'm sure there was somebody working behind the scenes that said, hey, Jeremy doesn't know this yet, but we need to keep him around because he is good.
Oh, yeah.
And he's doing a great job. And he's working with us, and he's bleeds blue and orange. So sounds like you were doing some good stuff, and we're going to get to what you're doing now, but we're going to take a little break here because our listeners want to hear the rest of your story and what brought you to the podcast. I need to talk about the sponsor one more time. Buck and Honey's has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew since the beginning. With 4 locations in the Madison area, one is always near. People ask why Buck and Honey's. Owner Tom Anderson places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He has a mental health professional available for them should they need support. I don't know how many businesses go above and beyond their EAP, Employee Assistance Program, but Buck and Honey's does. Jeremy Payne is in the Buck and Honey's remote studios today to talk about his life and how he has had to navigate the major identity pivots that life has presented. He's here to share his story and what it takes to remain positive despite the curveballs life throws at you. You'll hear more about that and the work he is doing now. Please stay tuned. Don't change that channel. You're not going to want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365, and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim Decora. We're in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. The podcast is where we feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. Today, I'm glad to be joined in the Buck and Honey's remote studios by Jeremy Payne, a fellow Platteville pioneer. He is here to talk about how he has worked through a life of pivots and how he's helping others succeed in life with some different mentoring programs that he is involved with. Segment 2, I've mentioned the words identity pivots a couple of times when describing some of the challenges you've faced since you left a home life that was filled with so much happiness, safety, and joy in your teens. I'm going to mention some of these identity pivots, and I'm going to let you talk about each. I'd say let's just spend a couple of minutes because there's so many other things that we got going on here.
I got you.
The first, you kind of alluded to, but we're going to talk about a little more here, is being a star athlete in high school and then moving on to college and some of the things you had to deal with. 2 minutes, kind of talk a little bit about that again.
Yeah, we already covered a lot of it, but one element of that sort of dynamic I think is important to cover is how great that internal feel and responsibility to live out the things that others expect for you to be. And that first time, where you go home and you visit community and you check in and everybody's asking it, family, friends, loved ones, what are you doing? How are things going? And they're hitting it, they're going straight for those expectations. That's an immense moment. And at a young age, developmentally, it can be rearranging, And so, I have to navigate that sort of dynamic. At the time, kind of walk that walk alone, but eventually, transferring, making that transition, getting connected to mentors, being more open and vocal about my needs and chasing down support helped to clarify direction in that area. And so happy to be on the other side of that thing.
Number 2 was the 2019 and 2020 COVID racial pandemic. Yeah. And as a Black man, how did that time affect you? Because as a Native American, a man of color myself, it affected me. It concerned me not only for the African American Black community, but there was also some thought of, are they going to do that same kind of thing to the Native Americans, the Hispanics? It seemed like a lot of people had targets. And I'm going to let you talk, though.
Yeah. That was quite a time in my life, as it was for a lot of people. And 2019, 2020, when that thing came on, and I'm talking about COVID specifically, that kind of burst the door open for the racial pandemic, I like to call it, together. When the pandemic came on early on, for myself, I really thought the world was getting to a place where it was about to end. When they said you can't go to work, when the streets were cleared, when I saw nothing coming up and down Highway 151, I couldn't hear the loud trucks coming through.
There's not much usually coming down and then that road anyway.
Exactly.
And then when there's no one coming.
Exactly. That's why I'm like, oh no, this is getting way too real. And so, we had to stay in place. My family and I at that time, me and my partner, we lived out in the country. So it was just us in the middle of what some would call nowhere, but I know how important it is to be mindful with your words.
In the sticks.
You know what I mean? We were like out there and we had to figure it out together, same routines, keeping up with media. And then we all, I think collectively as a society, we all bear witness to media because we didn't have much to do. And so that was the scary piece for me that created anxiety within is, watching people lose loved ones and not be able to send them off in ways that matter for their families. Mm-hmm. And, seeing the tension and with politics and trying to figure out what is true, what is knowledge, what is not. That was like rearranging for me. And then the piece of being home, stuck, tension building up, I think, in people and community. You could see the racial tension across various sectors of society rise in my short time of living. It felt like a peak moment, Mm-hmm. And so, for me as a Black man in America, it was really important for me to self-examine, build bigger politic. How do I keep my family happy, safe, and well-resourced? How do I, as a person who value collective care and community, how do I look out for others and take care of myself in this moment of time we live? And then also thinking bigger, more global, what are we walking into? What is this? Thinking back to my life experiences, I grew up watching planes dive into buildings. I bear witness to that as a young person. I grew up seeing the stock market fall, housing markets get thrashed and impact every sector of society, irregardless of the type of home you lived in. That impact my family directly. And then to have this sort of moment crash up. And, I grew up in I would say a fairly religious community and background. And so some of this felt like the stories my aunt used to tell me, like when it come, these are the things you're going to see. And so it was really messing me up on the inside. And so that was a critical moment. When you want to talk about anxiety, right? Like creating stories in your mind, inventing things, all-time worries and trying to explain away things that are unexplainable. That was peak. And that was something I had to reckon with and face. And for a moment, it was just me and my family. But, as a solution, we had to lean on community.
And we got through it.
Yes, we did. Here we are.
And here we are a couple of years later, and we can talk about it in a rational manner,
yes.
About an irrational time.
Part.
Holy cow. Well said. Number 3, and this I've had to do a little bit now as I retired. I venture home to my homeland once in a while, Wisconsin, Dells, Wisconsin. Okay. Got a lot of friends and family, and they're all getting older now.
Sure.
And things happen when people age. And so number 3 has been reconnecting with childhood friends as adults, and probably doesn't happen quite as often because you're not in Chicago.
Yeah.
You're relatively close, a couple hours away, but
right.
I'm going to shut my yapper and you talk about it.
No, I appreciate the guidance into that question because I think you raised some important things to consider. But yeah, a challenge in my life, ironically enough, was reconnecting with family and friends from back at home. And it was simply for dynamics for, leaving for college, finding something that works for you, that feels right, and you fully immerse yourself into it. So those trips home become less and less. And over time, things happen. As we mentioned earlier, we had the pandemic play out. There was things happening well before the pandemic. Pandemic just kind of burst the door open. And so there was some disconnection from people I grew up with who I truly called family and friends. And so there was this period where I had to reintroduce myself to those folks, and I had to honor their growth and development and their dance with life, the way that life sometimes beat up on us and impact us, and we carry that with us. I had to honor that family and friends have navigated that, and I have as well. How do we make sure in reconnecting, like, we can have boundaries, uphold respect and dignity, and play in safe ways? Because as you know, when life gets you, whether it be just general interpersonal things or social emotional things, like, it weighs you and it rearranges you and can reshape you, especially if you don't seek or have access, to resources to address those things. And so that's been an incredible, tough dance to do. But I am so glad I took that leap of faith and pursued it fully because, I've been able to reconnect with high school friends, middle school, elementary, and some of the people who really were a part of critical moments in my childhood, like some of my peak joy. I was able to reconnect with that. So I think about my friends like Eric, Brandon. I told myself I wouldn't name folks, but Eric, Brandon, Mike, Diana, Aston. Oh my God, there's so many more out there. I apologize if I don't list you all. But we've been getting up and we've been reconnecting and sharing our new histories, our new family dynamics. And it's been a wonderful exchange.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Since the show has a mental health component to it,
yeah.
and you're kind of in that work a little bit, you mentioned each experience leading to some kind of anxiety. Mm-hmm. What kinds of symptoms were you experiencing that, and then I'm going to quote you here, pulled you into a space where doubt felt louder than clarity? Ooh. What was going on? I mean, racing pulse, lightheadedness, fear of fear? Go ahead, talk about that.
Yeah, you named some of them, and I think for me it showed up as, or shows up, right? This is something I still dance with to this day. It shows up as doubt, questioning yourself. I would say over analyzing. So those moments of like, am I tripping, or is this person really trying to get me, or something like that? Mm-hmm. Like it shows up like that. I think for me too, sometimes it's, I get a little bit tense, my shoulders sit up a little bit more high. And then just the ability to focus, because that doubt, as you mentioned with the quote, thank you for quoting that, that doubt sometimes gets so loud, like it blurs so much. And so like with that blur and the loudness and the distractions, that logic portion of the brain, it sometimes can get lost in the shuffle of things. So sometimes you lose touch of what is a real threat, what is really an immediate harm versus something that I'm just clouded right now and I'm just misreading it. And so, yeah, that's how anxiety shows up for me.
So when you have these anxious moments of cloudiness and things aren't very clear and your pulse is racing and you're starting to have some doubt, how are you coping? What would you do to alleviate some of that, or would you ride it out?
Yeah. When I'm in the moment and I'm fearful, have doubt, or starting to question things, for me, I have to simply slow down and find grounding within that presence. And sometimes for me, as odd as this may sound, sometimes for me it's simply getting outside, being alone, and just like re-tapping into my senses. So I'm breathing, I'm feeling, I'm smelling, I'm doing these things that bring as my one mentor used to say, bring your balloons down, right? Like bring it back down to reality a little bit, right? Before you can really self-examine and maybe make a decision on how to assuage some of the things that are building up. But it sounds very basic and very practical, but there is power in doing that. I've learned that, taking in oxygen really, it actually does something to the brain. I don't fully know the science behind that today. I don't have it with me, but I think you had some guests on here who talked about this sort of stuff and at the conference you hosted. But yeah, taking that air in, bringing that oxygen up to the brain truly brings clarity forward for you to fully address your needs.
We go back to just kind of think a little bit about when you were leaving high school, high school star, 2019-20, COVID pandemic, racial pandemic, and then reconnecting with some of your friends. Who would you lean on for support when you had to deal with all those individual things and then you had a moment to like get in the car or be at home or drive somewhere? Who were you leaning on for support? Family, mentors, friends, coworkers, coaches?
I would say a combination of all the above, but really it's leaning more into community. There's a lot of self-help books out there. There's a lot of positive psychology that will tell you to, sometimes you need to cut them off. You got to separate. You got to get away from them. And I promise you that is oftentimes well-intended and meant well, but you got to be tactful, and isolation can create more problems. So I had to lean into community. And specifically, I think about out in Platteville, we co-created this thing through the pandemic called the Black Platteville Community Network. And it was a very simple concept. There were people in community. We knew we were going through a lot. We knew there was a lot of tension. And we said, hey, let's just be friends who help other friends to get through these times. And so there's specific folks I can think of, the Wages family out in Platteville who got Chicago roots, Dr. Sakara Wages, Carla Wages, James Wages, and Jordy Wages, a wonderful family who also worked alongside other women in the community. And so we had elected officials, we had school board members, we had youth as a part of this concept who just literally came together and created moments of restoration. So in leaning into community, in trying to figure out what we needed to work through our situations collectively, we also created like broader experiences to share that really tethered us together. And while it was Black centered, it was open and free to all people. It was a simple concept and it was magic, man. We went through a wonderful run, 2019 through current date. And I would say, now, folks have gone in different directions and life pulls us to the different things, but we still hold the concepts of helping people when they need it, and we show up how we do. And so I don't know if I answered that question well, but it's really leaning into community.
I think what I get from that is this, that you came together in a tough time. And, what are we going to do? Who are we going to lean on? Well, we got us. And then us leaves college and goes to their different parts of the world. If you go into a community and you're unfamiliar, you can always go back to the BPCN, Black Platteville Community Network. You can always go back to those folks and hey, I'm struggling with this or that, and they're going to have your back because they had your back in the toughest of times And then you also had their back.
Yes, we have, and they have held me down. And I would be remiss to not mention, too, lean on diverse Black women representation as well, because they low-key be knowing the way. And so, like, the women who did step up in our community, they gave us the framework to tether it to this. They said, if we want to make safety, happiness, and joy for our community, we got to be intentional about it. And that's how we will reach more people. And so they said center breast, love, care, and joy, but also independence, protection, and restoration. And once you couple those things together and be intentional in your framing, you truly do invite as many people into that fold. And so, again, the Wages family, man, they were really the ones who called on us to get busy and not keep stuck, and to forge our way through that pandemic that was impacting so many people.
Inspiring stuff. So let's talk about what Jeremy Payne is doing now. Yeah. And you said in the notes that you sent me, right now, I am in a season of expanding alignment.
Yeah.
What kinds of work are you doing to satisfy that quote?
Yeah. So that's a fancy way of saying I ain't doing much.
I love it. You mind if I use that?
Look, go ahead, quote it. Just remember who said it first. But no, seriously, I'm doing things, but really what's different now compared to the past is I'm not chasing anything. There's nothing out there in the world that I feel overly desired to slice pieces of myself apart to pursue at the expense of losing love, connection, and joy to my family, friends, and loved one. And so in this season of alignment, I find things that come to me in natural flow. So like even this opportunity to interview with you, I went to a training. There was a wonderful guest on a panel. We connected, exchanged contact information. And then shortly after, she felt so much about me where she was like, hey, do you know about Tim and these opportunities? We connected and here we are. Mm-hmm. You know, that's really been the thing is I took time to clarify, as my mentor, Dr. Sakara Wages, called me to do. She said, clarify what you do, the impact you have, and how people describe what they value in you, because that's going to become the thing, right, that people rally you for. And that's how this sort of idea of My Black Carrot mentoring emerged as a catch-all. It really is an entity that I created from the ground up, and I'm building as I go. It's to describe mentorship, but from a level of love, care, and support, and what that means for me. And then how can I, as I'm already doing in my professional, personal, and my joy spaces, how can I couple that together and have people recognize it, own it, and spread that story as wide as I can? And so, yeah, that's where we're at.
I think if you're around long enough and people... You're doing great work, by the way.
Thank you so much.
And just stuff that you're sharing rolls off your tongue, and you're not making it up. It's stuff that you have done that makes it sound so good. You're around long enough, you're going to start to have people starting to reach out to you more and more. And I'm hoping that is exactly what comes from your presence on the podcast today, is that people start to reach out to you.
Thank you.
This is where the subscribers, followers, and listeners take out the notebooks, pens, and pencils and jot some things down. Here are Jeremy Payne's 5 suggestions that have allowed him to survive and thrive through some identity pivots in his life. And I'm going to toss these in softball style. Can you hit a softball?
Come on with it.
Come on with it. Okay. Here is what you shared, and I'm going to have you share a little bit of something in about 60 seconds or less, and I'm going to groove them in there.
Okay.
So here's what you said. Number 1, go where the love is. Go and hit that.
Yes. Go to people who are easy. Go to where you don't overthink. Go to places that feel safe and where you don't have to overwork. Reciprocity is the key in this thing. Don't go to a place where you're pouring too much in and you're not receiving that back. That's what I mean by when I say go to where the love at.
Absolutely. Number 2, you already touched on this, but get outside often. Go and hit that.
Yes, nature is important, and it reminds us of our interconnectedness as a society. And so getting outside can reset. It can ground you. And when you're amongst it, if you slow down enough with it, if you play in it well, you'll see that nature starts to unrecognize that you're a part of it. And so nature is an important place to get to rejuvenate.
Number 3, practice grace on grace. Go and hit that.
Yes. Stop trying to be fucking perfect, you know? And I say that with my whole chest. understand that like in seasons of change and alignment, you are allowed to do things well and you're allowed to fuck up along the way. And so with that, lean into it. And once you do, and once you own your internal value congruence, can't nobody tell you shit about yourself. And so that's what I'm really speaking to. When I say grace on grace, don't be too hard on yourself, and definitely don't be too hard on peers and communities, because we all in this shit together.
So well said.
Yeah.
Number 4, revisit your family histories. Go ahead and hit that.
Oh my goodness. So I've had the pleasure of hearing oral stories from family. Also have been connected with genealogists to connect things back to my family histories and stories. We trace back to 7 to 10 years and even more than that beyond. And in that journey, I found unique stories and histories. You know, oftentimes we feel like we're unique and special and that we're going through something that is unknown. And to be honest with you, in my family history, I come to learn 2020 beyond ain't really too special from what other people have. You know what I mean? And so for me, that's what that means. Go back, learn the stories, learn the ways, because there's so much to draw from history.
And history tends to repeat itself. And in some ways that's good.
Yeah.
And in some ways we can change can't change the beginning of the book, but we can change the end for the better.
Yeah.
Well said. Number 5, stay connected to joy. Go ahead and hit that.
Yeah, I wrote about this alongside Dr. Scar Wages, and we said joy is a form of resistance. So joy is not frivolous. Joy is not like this playful term we write and post about and do within books. Joy is a strategy, you know, to assuage harm and to ground ourselves and to make sure that we're full to functionally adapt in spite of any circumstance that is thrown at us. And so I take joy very fucking serious, and I call on your listeners to do the same.
Absolutely. Well, what an episode. I'm so glad you could join the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew today. Your approach to life and how you manage to navigate a life of pivots and stay positive is inspiring. And this, to me, you exude a lot of positive and a lot of energy, and it doesn't feel made up at all. It's just who you are, and then that is very inspiring. And you're sharing strategies with others and empowering them as well. So that is great. Call to action. Jeremy Payne just shared his story and how he has lived a life of pivots, twists, and turns, and is now inspiring others. He wanted to share his story and bring awareness to the work he is doing now to mentor others. Here are Jeremy Payne's 5 suggestions to survive and thrive. Number 1, go where the love is. Number 2, get outside often. Number 3, practice grace on grace. Number 4, revisit your family histories. And number 5, stay connected to joy. Final thoughts as we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Are there any final thoughts, Jeremy Payne?
I just want to say I am so honored to be here. Thank you so much, seriously, for slowing me down.
Pioneers.
I know, right? We got to stay together.
We're pioneers forever.
But then I also want to thank my daughter, Nova Payne, for reminding me of the importance of slowing down, to be present, and to rally joy effortlessly. So thank you for that. And I also want to shout out my life partner, my wife, and Bethany Payne, for being a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful partner in this wild life and holding me down, but also holding me accountable for value congruence and to chase down alignment. And so I am overly joyed, to share community in that way. This is something I was looking forward to for a very long time. I don't know if you noticed with those emails and text messages, I really want to make sure I had it happen, but also to do this thing right. So thank you. And
I also appreciate your patience, because we talked about some life things, not going on with me, but friends and family and kind of like you alluded to, friends and mainly family. We got to take care of them. So this has had to take a little bit of a back seat, but I'm so glad you came on today because of your energy and passion and emotion.
Yeah.
That's what we pioneers bring to the table. Passion.
Sign us up.
And love. Sign us up.
Excellent. Promo for the school. Jesus.
Yes.
Pay us.
And there you go. On our next episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we will have another amazing guest in the Buck and Honey's remote studios who will share how they learned to survive and thrive. If you have a story to share or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecora@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.